Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. This is a virtual book fair by ReadersMagnet to showcase the author and not the publisher. It's a very unique book fair, and we're glad that you're along for the maiden voyage. My name is Eleanor Gassetta, and I am an author with ReadersMagnet, and I will be moderating this session. For our author of the hour is Theresa McMorrow Jordan, and my panelist is John Abines. I would like to thank ReadersMagnet for the work that their management and staff has done in putting this forward. And you have today and tomorrow for the last of the author of the hour sessions. Please join us. There are, in addition to that, 150 booths of all of the authors. Please join them. Look at our booth. My booth is Generations of Good Food, and Theresa's booth is Get Crowned. Before we move to, I'll do a little housekeeping, which is please mute your computers. And if you have any questions for Tess, send them along in the chat box and we will respond to them. She will respond to them. John and I won't, but she will respond to them as we get them. And I'm going to talk very briefly about my two books. My first book is my first book is One Caregiver's Journey, which is about my 9.5 years of caregiving for my mother when she fell and broke her hip at the age of 93. And then she passed away in my home at the age of 102. The book is easy read, and it's basically a snapshot of the realities and the changes and the challenges that occurred to me over those 9.5 years. My second book, which was just recently published by ReadersMagnet, is Generations of Good Food, and it is a compilation of 200 recipes of my mother's family. So if you like Italian food, that's the book for you. I'm going to let John talk a few minutes about himself, and then I'm going to do a bio and a brief introduction of our author of the hour. John?
I am not even going to talk about myself, Ellie, because, the stage is Tessa's and the stage is yours. So go right along, ma'am.
Thank you, John. Theresa McMorrow Jordan, who we will just refer to as Tess.
Nice.
Now serves as the Director of Team Services as the Human Resource at Alpha Omega Winery in St. Helena, California, which I might add is the scene behind her. She has spent over 25 years serving as an HR consultant and talent and organizational development specialist for a variety of businesses. Since her early young adult life, she was a Catholic nun, and she has a strong spiritual and altruistic foundation from which she serves. She also has been strongly engaged in communities where she lives and has lived, even has the distinction of being the first woman to ever run for mayor of Sullivan County, Tennessee. She's a model builder, after-school program model, academic excellence volunteer program model, a virtual success academy prototype designed to bridge the gap in schools and youth academic and career path success. And she also knows a bit of something about what it takes to achieve transformational level breakthroughs. She is also a mother of 2 sons. This book contains a message she received from God, and she feels passionately about this being an assignment that she must complete before her life is done. Her book is entitled Get Crowned, Sparking a Heaven on Earth Transformation. One of the questions Tess was asked by so many was, why did you leave the convent? And this most sacred and loving message from God came as a result of her grappling with the question, I was writing for families and children up to the day she left the convent. And it was that she was plagued with doubt about her vocation around the 10th year of service. From the day she left the convent through the years up to today, the moment of God releasing her in a supernatural way, she would seek God's release from those vows which she took because she made them to him. And yes, the sisters released her, and the bishop took all of 5 minutes to release her. But what about God? Was God mad at her for walking away from her vocation? And as a result of God's release, she has been able to see her life through God's eyes. And the message of this book is meant for all souls. When she asked God, why didn't you give the message to Oprah or the Pope or the Dalai Lama, who could reach millions and millions of people around the globe? What God pressed in her heart was to make her deeply emotionally recall that he took her breath away, which is why God chose her to be the vessel of carrying his message to all of us. God has filled her heart with such love and passion for souls. He loves every one of us deeply, and because she always designed to change the models with some kind of vision, she arrived at how we could make the shifts toward more like heaven and turn to focus on the crown. For those who do not believe in God, just know that God totally understands you and the details of your journey and the reason for your lack of belief in his existence. And God wants you to know that if God exists, just seek him. And he promises you will become a special, undeniable experience of him. Because you are precious and dear to God, and God knows when you come to know that he exists, you will pave the way for other souls to find him. And for all of us who deeply know that there is more in this life, more love, more peace, more belonging, and that, my friends, is what stands at the center of Tessa's invitation to join her grassroots to get crowned. And she wants us to be a part of the army. And she says an army only because that is the effort and dedication that is going to bring about heaven on earth transformations. Imagine it all. Welcome, Tess.
Thank you so much, Ellen.
Storytellers.
Thank you. What a blessing. Thank you.
We're going to turn it over to you, and John and I are going to listen, and we're going to ask questions as we go along. Tell us about you.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I feel sometimes that I lived an upside down and backwards life, but I think that I guess I want to acknowledge that I have 7 brothers, and they're wonderful, and they are. I was second in order. When I was very small, I had a brother, Jamie, that died, and so my father, from whom I believe I got my deep faith in the existence of God, he never recovered from that. It was very difficult for him. And what he did is that he inserted in our grace before meals for Jamie to please pray for us all from heaven. And so I think because I had that in my life, that experience, I just always believe there is a heaven, and so in other words, I walk through this earth with the idea of a heaven and earth. And my mother was a very, you can imagine, a very selfless, loving mother, and she just passed last July. So I have 2 sons, and I'm so proud of them. And my oldest son, again, he's married to beautiful Becca, and they have 2 sons. And unfortunately, this last December, baby Elias lived only 1 hour when he was born. So we're still recovering from that. But again, because of our faith, we know that Elias is in heaven. And so this consciousness of a place of that this is not it, this is not all there is, has been with me ever since I was young. And so I think, I had the poster, the Robert Frost poster up in my wall. The Road Less Traveled was up on my wall. And so I just wonder if that's how I chose to go into the convent, because it definitely was the road less traveled. In fact, the pastor, when you go into the convent, you have to have a letter of reference. And the pastor at the church where I went, when the sisters, I heard this later, I don't think you're supposed to know this, but someone told me that when they asked the pastor to write a letter of recommendation, he had to ask them 3 times, who are you talking about? Because I would say that, I was just a regular teenager, I mean, I sewed my own bikini. So I was, in the middle of the desert, Edwards Air Force Base, we were at the pool every day. So I was very normal, but my heart, I really remember always having a heart for the world, even when I was young. And, of course, I'll date myself, but the Hands Across America was an experience that I was involved in. And collecting in our rice bowls money for the poor, and being exposed to the fact that the rest of the world were not having a life like we did. And I would say, I'm also the firstborn American in our family. My father is actually originally from County Leitrim in Ireland. I hope some of them are on. And I have, and my mother was born in England, but a lot of the Irish people were forced to go to England for work because it was very difficult to survive. There were, kind of famine times in Ireland. And so a lot of Irish people were forced to move to England for jobs and such. So, but my mother's family's from County Mayo, which I've visited both. And so I'm the firstborn. My oldest brother was born in England. My father went into the military, or I should say, I'm getting a little confused, but my father at 14 immigrated to Ireland. He was one of 13 children, and his mother died giving birth to the 13th. So at any case, at age 14, he immigrated to America, and he found his way into the Air Force. And was stationed in England, and that's how my mother met. So I just think that, my parents really did come from poverty. There was a lot of poverty in their upbringing, a lot of adversity and hardship, but their faith in God was very, strong. And so I often had asked my mother, after I went to England and Ireland with her, for a visit, I said, Mom, how could you go from London to Edwards Air Force Base? How could you be happy there? And she would just point to, just, I guess, in America, just the plenitude of everything, I guess, the food and the water. There's just so many things that we take for granted as Americans that just were not as available, I guess. I don't know. But she said that she loved it. She loved the sense of community and that was really true. A lot of us are on Facebook still all these years later, that we did really enjoy a beautiful childhood on the base. So,
well,
sorry.
You've got a couple messages from people. Margie and Rise are both sending you good wishes. I have a question for you.
Sure, thank you.
Your title is Get Crowned, Sparking a Heaven on Earth Transformation. And that's kind of and you have your crown.
Yes.
You have your crown. Tell us what really is in the meaning of your title.
Thank you. So essentially in my, the core message of what God gave to me is that he loves us so much. And and he wants us to understand that when we pass from this life into the next, is that he is going to crown us, that there is a crowning ceremony in heaven. And so that the crown is symbolic of how we lived our life. So it's like him collecting all of the things that you've done in your life, and that he is actually collecting all these beautiful things that we've done. So even when we shared our sandwich in kindergarten, there's a little jewel on the crown. So he's not up, he's really a champion of us. And God's message is that I love you so much. And I think, in these times of COVID and all of the fear-based messaging and the hate messaging, I think God, he's wanting us to focus on that moment, the moment when you're going to meet God, your maker. And he wants you to understand that it's going to be a very loving moment. And so how do you want it to go is what I'm saying, and I know when he gave me that message of the crown originally, I couldn't sleep all night because I was so upset that my crown didn't have any jewels on it. I hadn't done anything yet, and I woke up early the next morning, and I can't explain it, but he showed me my crown, and on the front of my crown is this big royal diadem. I can't really explain it perfectly, but he said to me, "You gave me your youth," and I was a nun for 12 years, so I knew it was from God, because only God can find a way to say something to you, and kind of get through. So when it was just his way of saying, no, this is serious. This is serious. People don't understand. I'm real. I love them so much. I'm not up here, trying to count up how many commandments they broke. I'm up here championing him. And part of my design is I made him with a free will. And that's because I want them to freely choose to love me, free to choose to accept me, free to accept their highest design of themselves. So so the get crowned is kind of like, let's all get crowned. Let's focus on that crown so that we can bring a heaven on earth transformation. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the book title.
John, do you have any questions?
No, but I think this is the best time to transition to your giveaway.
Yes.
Yes.
So I do have another crown. I'm not going to give mine away, but I do have another one just like it. And so for everyone who comes and visits, who's here today on this broadcast live,
are you doing the broadcast, or they can go to your booth, right?
Both, yes. They can go to my booth, even just visiting the booth at all, and just put your name there. If I can give them my email, I'll give them my email.
Absolutely, you can.
So yes, or we have a feature actually in your booth.
Oh, okay.
They can just scroll down, send you a private
chat,
a private chat or private email for that will have their name, address, perhaps. So how many crowns are up for grabs?
I have 5 crowns.
5, guys.
Hey,
viewers.
5 crowns.
5 crowns. I mean,
yes.
Wow. I mean, the only crown I know right now is from the Netflix series, but I don't even know where to buy a crown, right? So guys, viewers, if you're watching, it's not every booth that offer you crowns. There's a lot of books that's been given away. There's a lot of Amazon cards, but this one, crowns. We should. So the mechanics is just drop their names in the private chat, right? And with their email addresses, I guess.
Yes.
And then you can, or physical address as well, right? Because you have to send the crown.
Well, I can email them if they're chosen. Like if we have so many, I only have 5 crowns.
You only have 5 crowns.
But if they give me their email address, I will contact them, and then I can get their address. I don't want them to not leave their email and their address, because they don't want me to have all that. So just leave your email, and I will get in touch with you if you are one of the lucky 5. And I might even be able to find something else, if
Ooh.
because
Yes. So
I
yeah.
do have something else that came through, but I won't, in the mail. So I definitely am looking forward to connecting with as many people as I can. And I am very famous for giving away little this and that. And the crown is really important because it's the reason why I'm giving away the crown is because I'm trying to help people to focus on that moment. Because look at India right now. I mean, people are dying all over the place over there. And I know my mother died last July, and it was in the middle of COVID. And it was, it was a very, very difficult experience for me. And of course my grandbaby. But and my youngest brother, also was exposed to the COVID. So I've been there directly. So having that kind of sense of our lives and taking the time right now to really align ourselves with our highest is really important. So the crown is to symbolize that, and just to remind you that, God is watching, but he's lovingly watching, which I wanted to say also that what God brought forward to me is that this is a very important era. This is a very critical time in our existence as humanity, and that he wants people to, when he's looking down on the earth, he's seeing that some people are really full of themselves, like in other words, they have they have this great capacity for intellect, and they and the whole idea of, the solution to our world is to depopulate, the solution is to, all of these intellectual things. And he's just like wants to point out that's an ego thing, edging God out. So if God doesn't exist, then you have to depopulate. If God doesn't exist, so you can look at, you're on the right course when there's an abundance, when there's a, kind of a creative energy, that lifts all, that is easy, that actually when you come to the solution, it ends up to be easier than you think. Everything looks so complicated, but then it ends up to be an easier way. And so what he is saying is that you haven't even begun to understand the highest part of my design of you. Your soul is your highest part of your design. And what I see is you're navigating from your intellect, you're navigating from your emotions. Some are very navigated by their sexual organ, that we're not navigating. Some are navigating from fear, depression, sadness, guilt, and he's trying he wants to introduce us to this higher place, because this part of our soul, it is like the cell phone, if you don't plug it into the wall, it doesn't have the energy it needs to run. And we need to be plugged into our source, which is God. And if we don't plug in, we can't operate from that place, because that place of us, that soul, requires a continuous connection with the source. And that's a mindful connection. It is a free will, free choice to connect, right? Just like I have a free choice to connect to the wall with my phone, right? If I don't exercise that choice, then in the morning it's going to be dead. So there's so many signs of God's designs inside of our designs. Why is that? Because we are of God. We are of God. And so what he's trying to tell us in my message is that if we can get humanity to make that shift and operate from this higher part, allowing this higher part to navigate all the rest, that we will see transformation in the earth and in the world, in ourselves, in our families, and in our communities like we've never seen before. The unity, the love, the flow between and across cultures will come, because when you're operating from this higher self, then the love flows. The unforgiveness, is gone, right? The jealousy is gone, because that doesn't have any room here. And so, and then of course, the only warning that he's also sternly giving a warning that if this shift doesn't happen, that a very, very worse outcome could happen for us too.
What
And
is
so,
the end? What do you think God, begin with the end.
sure.
Tell us
Okay.
about the end. What do you think the message is for us at the end? What's the end goal for us?
Okay.
What does it mean in the context of your book? What is the
Okay.
end goal?
Okay. So very good. So in other words, that the end goal is heaven, and it is a higher existence. It's beyond here. And so a lot of times, when I guess in my Christian experience and the cultures and communities that I've lived in, that, they're just kind of living, one day I'm going to get to heaven. One day I'm going to get to heaven. I'm just going to endure all this and I'm going to get to heaven, right? One day we're all going to get to heaven. And I'm saying our work is to make this more like heaven. So we shouldn't just be waiting for that finish line, dying and going to heaven, but we should be actually working to transform that. And as we do that transformative work, it's adding to the jewels in the crown, right? And it's transforming this world. So we should be seeing a progression toward a more like heaven existence. So that is the begin with the end in mind. So how do we get there, is, in my book, I'm talking about how making the time seeking God. So connecting with your source, right? God, in a daily kind of way. And then removing, meditating on the barriers. So as I shared, I guess I should share my story about how I got the vision, right? Because in the convent, I never got any visions, by the way. I was sitting in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I could tell you, I was like wanting to be Saint Theresa of Lisieux. I wanted to be Padre Pio. I wanted to see God. I wanted to have a miracle, right? But this experience of God, so many years later, it was worth waiting for. I could say that. But he was. So what happened, as I said, when I left the convent, I left because of doubt. And I want to share this because God has placed on my heart that doubt is also a grave destroyer of ideas and of breakthroughs, is doubt. And the interesting thing about doubt is the more you entertain it, the more it takes a hold. And I could tell you firsthand that's probably what happened, right, in my case. So again, you shared, Ellie, that, the sisters let me off, the bishop left me off, but I needed God to release me. And I was in a Baptist church. My husband's family was in this Baptist church up in the mountains in Southwest Virginia, and just beautiful faith community. And they always invited me to share music. I would get up just like one of them, and I felt very loved. Well, this one Sunday, I just got stream of tears, and it wasn't sad tears. It was just like bathing, cleansing tears. And in the midst of that, I got this message that I have a fierce enemy who attacked you with doubt about your vocation until you left. For had you stayed, you would have done great good. So those were the words that came to me. And then in a few days or week, I learned that Sister Ida, who started that order I was in, died that weekend. And then God helped me understand that when can't explain how, but when we pass, it's sort of like the disco ball and those little mirror tiles that you get your life played back on these little, I don't know how to explain it, and as you see God's fullness, once you see all of the details, all of a sudden you can release this person who harmed you, or forgive yourself, because God is giving you the whole context. And in that kind of dialogue, you are healed. That's that salvation. Salvation means healing. And so now and so what God explained to me is that he explained that to Sister Ida, that I have a fierce enemy that plagued her with doubt about her vocation, for had she stayed, she would have done great good. And Sister Ida thought I left casually, like I just threw my vocation away. She had thought she was going to be one of our leaders. She was going to take the baton. She was, which I never even thought about being the leader of that. I wasn't even on my map. Okay. And so, but it helped me to understand that God released her on that side, right? And I got the grace on this side. And God was helping me to understand, even though I had to wait for a long time, that we were fine. God and I was fine. He wasn't mad at me for leaving the vocation. He knew all the circumstances. He knew what happened. And so from that point, then of course, he showed me the angels bring the crown in and showing me the jewels on the crown, and explaining that each one of the jewels represented something that happened in your life and things you've done and all. And then that's when the crowning ceremony comes. So that was the grace that I got, and then he was just explaining to me, again, as far as the mission or what next, is that God really wants people to understand that he's not up there collecting the sins that they've done, right? It's rather that he's seeking us to choose God, right? And I think that I do think that we do have to we do have to release the unforgiveness, right? We do have to release and face the harm that we have done to others, I believe. Because I think when we face these things, we're released of them and our relationships can become closer. If we don't face our lies, if we don't come to terms with just the way we're living our life, that we've compromised or whatever, then we can't enjoy that free flow, right? That God is wanting us to enjoy on a day-to-day basis.
So I understand that you have a lot of ideas on how to roll this message out in some really interesting and fun ways across the country and possibly even the world. Tell us about that.
Okay, so the first idea I had was to have a big RV with Get Crowned on it and kind of land into communities. And of course, it would take a lot of pre-organization, but to do a flash mob in the mall and then get people to sign up to go to this event, like a 3-day event. And my idea was to share this idea of the Get Crowned, and then have one. It would be already pre-organized, right? Because you can't just go in there and make it happen. It's all pre-organized. But when you land in there, you already have, like, let's say there's this trailer community and we're going to totally renovate this trailer community together. And so basically just showing that we can, as a community, make a difference and let, heaven on earth kind of show up. And where those little sewer caps are, I was going to get one made, like in Hollywood, it's like those stars, the Walk of the Stars. And I'm thinking, so what, let's put some stars in the communities that actually show how communities can change the communities. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of like put so in other words, it would say the day that heaven touched the earth, and just kind of be a reminder to that community of what we did together, So just kind of doing some practical things. And then I had another idea. I thought, maybe you just need to make a movie out of it, because I'm too old. I'm not going to have enough time to go around the whole world doing this, And but then I thought of American Idol. Again, I have done partnerships. Like I said, I built that prototype, but I didn't know how to bring it to life. And I'm still sitting here hoping that I'm going to be able to bring that prototype to life, because it will build a connection. It will shift the responsibility of learning to the individual child and help them to understand when you take the time to read, but they'll be plugged into this other group of people that are also studying, and getting them resources and such like that. But I wanted to do a show. I hope nobody listening is going to steal my idea, but I wanted to do a show that's like American Idol meets Mother Teresa meets Shark Tank, so that the grassroots community is actually the voting community. You know what I mean? That they get to vote on which of these transformers, that have these ideas, so in other words, when American Idol, they come with their talent, right? But for the Get Crowned, they're coming with their transformational ideas, right? And this is what we're doing. And then the community would be voting, and then the sponsors or the funders, would be the ones giving those prizes to those transformers. So that's kind of another fun idea that I have. So, but, but in the meantime, I really believe, I think probably one of the things that kind of coming out of the convent that really has broken my heart more than anything, and God knows, is that, we don't have the spiritual development, that there's no mentorship on this higher part of ourselves, to really to learn how to navigate from this higher part. It's almost like there's been a campaign edging God out of everything, edging it out, and so I think that's another focus that I would like to have and offer. I think I was talking about a 5-day challenge, so it's almost like people would plug in for 30 minutes in the morning with me, and I would kind of walk them through a 5-day kind of challenge to kind of kickstart them into that transition to navigating from their highest self, and then, so, those are just a few of my ideas. So
what would you tell young people? Occasionally at church, they'll do a week of vocational education, or they'll do a week of trying to convince predominantly it's young men, to join the priesthood. What would you tell a young woman who thought she was wanting to go into the convent? What advice would you give her to be on the lookout for, to really see if that was where her heart was?
I just think that it's a beautiful life, honestly, if you are called, right? And I think that go to retreats, with the group. You run and know, because there's hundreds. People don't realize how many congregations of nuns there are. And, one of my favorite people is Mother Teresa. I guess what I would want to say is I would like to call out the young people today to be like Mother Teresa, and start an order. Why go to an order? Start one. And why do I say that? Because she started the order. She was a nun, Sisters of Loreto, I think, and they were teaching the young girls in India, and girls were not they did not have access to education. So their order of those particular sisters were teaching these girls. And of course, Mother Teresa's seeing these people on the street, and it was just getting at her, like she was seeing this, nobody was doing anything. And, people were walking over these people in India, they were just, and I'm sure people were saying, oh, well, the government should do something, or, somebody should do something. But Mother Teresa was like the same way, until she finally realized, well, that God was pressing on her heart to do something, right? And what did that mean? That meant she left the order, because when you're in the order, you don't have to worry about your food anymore, right? You're giving your life. So the food is there and all of that. But when she stepped out on her own, now she has zero again. So there was nothing easy about what Mother Teresa made happen, right? And so I would say probably twofold, right? I guess I'm calling out the very highly capable people who have a heart for the homeless, people who have a heart for education, because I think that there's been a lot of abandonment to education because of money, right? And so, so there's so many places of service to spend your life. I would say pray, God will lead you. And if you are drawn, then all of the orders that exist have retreats that you can go and kind of discern. And all I can say is we need more. And I think that Mother Teresa, or even Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, or, I guess that story, was it Roger Bannister that broke the 4-minute mile? Tony Robbins always used to bring that idea up, that no one had ever ran a mile in less than 4 minutes until Sir Roger Bannister, I think. Bannister. And then after he did it, 18 other people have done it, and so in 100 years, they shaved off 30 seconds from that 4-minute mile. Okay. So what is my point? My point is that it's almost like we say, oh, well, they did that. There's room for how many more Mother Teresas, how many more? There's way open enough room, right, for people to start after school models, and break through. To me, our kids, we really need to do something huge to fix our educational system across the board, so that our kids have a way toward wealth. But there's Roger Kiyosaki, Laura Langemeyer, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. They're all out there doing these amazing trainings, and they have systems of business. And, so my whole thing to them, because it seems to me like they've all kind of agreed to keep God out of the conversation, and all I want to say is put him in. Put God in, and help us all to operate from that highest self. And then maybe people will have more success in funneling, into their amazing programs. That's what I would say.
Tell me why you decided to run for the mayor in Sullivan County, Tennessee.
That's
when was that?
That would have been in, I think, when was that? I don't want to say it wrong, so I'll just
talk about it. Then
yeah. So basically, because I had done the after-school model, and these were things that were approved by the school district and everything, and living inside of that community, I realized that I felt like I could impact the design of how we were operating. One thing is they had 25,000 kids. This is probably too much detail, but there were 25,000 kids only and 3 school districts. So when you have 3 school districts, you have 3 central offices, all the, the superintendents and all that money, and it's not going down into the classroom, So my one idea was to consolidate the schools. And unless you get, you can imagine that are the school superintendents going to push a consolidation? No, because that's pushing them out of a job and out of a career. So you got to have, the mayor, you got to have the top people kind of making it happen. But then also too, I learned through my divorce procedure that they were teaching parenting. You had to have parenting class before you could get divorced. I'm like, why aren't we doing this in PTA? So I was just noticing that we had the resources, but they just seemed to be not timed correctly, so I was hoping that as a mayor that I could actually help them to see how to better, collaborate and build kind of more of an intermediary. But I really wanted to drive, what I was telling them is, if we could build that school district, we will attract other businesses to the area. because to have a superior educational system and your kids succeeding.
Bring people in, yes.
Yeah. So that was the main reason why I ran.
And did they, even though you didn't win, did you make an impact? Was there ever a change? Did they ever change to the point of where somebody got the ideas of which you were trying to get across?
Well, I worked with Dr. Ramsey, who was the principal at the elementary school where I built that after school model. And her answer was, you're just ahead of, they just don't get it. You're just ahead. And so, but when I left and came back, the schools, where I was impacting, she was the one who told me, so it wasn't my opinion, but she said, you have no idea. You opened up this community. They have, they definitely have stepped up and, demanded more and things like that. But I do feel that, honestly, again, just from my eyes of being in the convent, I guess, and everything, I just feel like if I was to give a report card, I would say we really haven't cared enough about anything. That if you really truly care, it gets done.
Yeah.
It gets done. You right. Just fix it. You just build it. You make it happen. But that's what I would say as a community. And in that area, there was, just so much history there and a lot of roadblocks. I was not from there, so I ran into that kind of dynamic because I wasn't from there, and they didn't know why was I so, was I trying to turn them into Catholics? And, I don't really, there was a lot of, how that goes. It's a dynamic that can happen.
Were you an outsider?
I was an outsider, even though I lived there a total of 15 years. But by the time I ran, I would say it was probably about maybe 10 years there. Yeah. So I still love that place. It's so beautiful. But I would say they need people. I guess what I'm trying to say is leaders need to have vision, not just wanting the seat, not just wanting to be the mayor or wanting to be the VP or the president of the United States. You really need to have a vision.
Yeah.
Of what and not, you don't have to know all the details, but you definitely need to have a clear vision of what you're wanting. So anyway.
Your Virtual Success Academy prototype, what was and it says that was designed to bridge the gap in schools and youth, academic and career. Where was that? Was that where you are now in California, or was that somewhere else?
No, that was when I was in North Carolina. I was working with an amazing group for a Wired grant, because these 12 counties were very severely affected by NAFTA, because all of those jobs went away. And so, there was Levi's, there was, sewers, and there was furniture and tobacco, and, so all those jobs went somewhere else. And so when we were coming in with a grant, the reason for the grant was to try to work with all of the partners, the educational partners and the government agencies and such, to build these connections so that they could reintroduce new manufacturing, higher paying manufacturing jobs. So I was in the workforce, which had a youth component, and they were doing a special summer program. And in order for you to participate, your family could not have made more than $5,000 in a year. And so I set out, because I knew they all had phones, even though it was 2006. They were all, I didn't know for sure, but my design was to connect the kids to, like a radio talk show, right, with famous people, because these people are busy. But if we could create a space online, right, then, and of course, this was before all of this now, right? But I said, if we could create a space online, then we can get the kid no matter where they live, right? And they could get involved in these, on the phone, and then we could connect them up with scholarships. And of course, I wanted to gamify it so that every time they come on, they get scores and all of that. So I did that survey. The workforce boards were not wanting to let me do the survey, but I don't know who I got to get on my side, and then they did. So those 500 kids that I surveyed, 96% of them had cell phones, and or 98% of them had internet access. And so that's why I was able to get the money to build that prototype. So I went and traveled after there to try to get investors. I went to Spark people, and I went to different organizations to try to get additional, but I wasn't able to take it further. But when I demoed it to this great big team, across those 12 counties, when I showed them, the prototype, they're like, is there a back door for the adults? I need that, So I know it's still sitting there. I still have access to take it to the next level. And I have, there's some things that are growing that I might be able to partner with somebody who's working on something else. That's what I hope for. So
yeah. So Ellie, if I may,
Yes, sir.
wow, Tess, a lot of crowns there already, right? So HR director, that's one crown. Mayor, that's another crown. Author, another crown.
Building programs and prototypes.
That's the fourth crown. So how are these crowns integrated to your book?
Thank you so much. So I think that inside of the design, if you think about it, that, God's put it on my heart that, that the transformation, obviously is not just reading one book, right? You have to be committed to, kind of moving into this new navigational system. But I would say, I believe that what's coming, again, if I get the interest and I can build the grandstand of, people, then I would say that my program knowledge, and I'm also involved with Laura Langemeyer and others. And it's my hope to help individuals who are working on things and help them say, go here, authors, go to ReadersMagnet, plug them in where they have no idea that there are actually, places where they can go and get, sincere and great support in their ideas. So I'm sort of wanting to be this kind of intermediary with the crown in mind, so that people are feeling like, well, I've always wanted to do this, but I'm not sure how, and then try to help, coach them into other resources because I'm only one person. So I see myself as kind of, that intermediary. And I don't know, I trust that how this all rolls out, I'm calling people, I'm trying to say, hey, if you got interest, or if this is sparking something, or you're doing something that you feel like is very close to what I'm doing, contact me, because that's where I think it's going to come. And I, like I said, my satisfaction, my joy would be to hear back from people and saying, thank you so much. I've been away from God for quite a number of years, and you nudged me, and thank you.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that when they read the book and they really sit with the messages within the book, that they get that connection with God, and that they, I do have one beautiful story when I was I don't want to give away anybody's identity, but this person was diagnosed with cancer, and she came into my office. I was the director of HR there, and I worked at a number of places, so I'm keeping her identity sacred. But she came in and she closed the door and she said, I want you to pray for me. I just found out that I have this tumor. And I said, oh, well, I know this pastor. He's got the gift of healing. Let's go. Let me dial him up. Let's get him to pray. She goes, no, I want you. And see, that's the thing that's kind of weird, is that even though I was a nun, because everybody, comes to their own conclusions about that, but I always felt like it wasn't my place to pray for healing. I don't know why, right? Everybody has their thing, but I just never did. So, and I knew that God was trying to help me and remove these barriers, because all of us can be portals of grace, which is a book I'm writing on. My next book is going to be 100,000 portals of grace. And so that all of us are to be these portals of grace, right? So anyway, she insisted. And so I drove her to the holiest place I knew, the Blessed Sacrament Chapel at our parish. And I didn't ask for any permission. I just went in there with her to pray with her. And the very first thing that God put on my heart, because she had angels everywhere. She even had like angel fabric, she would have sewn a dress that had angels all over it. So everybody knew she loved angels. And I told her, I said, I don't know if this means anything to you, but God is saying it's time to remove this barrier. These angels we need to remove this barrier between you and God. She started to break down and cry. This lady's like in her 50s. Okay. She's breaking down and crying. I said, does that mean something to you? She said, yes, that she had been molested when she was 15 by her Baptist pastor, and that she had never been to church since then. And so we cried, and I told her that God cried.
Wow.
Because that's like the worst, that broke God's heart that day. And that she's just so beautiful, and that she was there for, I can't tell you, if I say any more, it'll give it away, but she was just so fantastic at her work, and it was just all heart and love. And I just kept telling her, I said, you just melt God's heart, so then we prayed, and she went to St. Jude, and that tumor was gone.
Wow.
So, I don't really, what I'm trying to say there is that what God is saying to me, or taught me right then, is don't handcuff me. If I want to use you to heal somebody, I will use you to heal, through you. So I feel like God is just so mad to be working through us, through all of us, to be that healing in the world, just to even be like at the grocery store, helping somebody who needs help to get their groceries in their car, or, it's just little things that can make us that kind of sweet portal, of grace and love. And that is the simplest. It's really on those simple ways where the transformation, if we're all doing it, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I give it back to the moderator, I just want to say that, wow, I think your vocation is still the same, from from being a nun to being the heart of that winery. In your background, because HR, the HR folks are always the heart of the company, right? And
thank you.
It's really the vocation of touching people's lives and making sure that we wear that crown.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Well, I'd like to say, Tess, that we're just about at the end of our hour, and I will remind our viewers that Tess has 5 crowns to give away. You can leave an email in her booth, and she will contact. You could leave your email address in her booth, and she will contact you for your personal information.
So Ellie, that's two more days. It's today and tomorrow.
It's today and tomorrow. For the maiden voyage of the Festival of Storytellers. And we will be back.
To get those crowns. 2 more days to get those crowns,
2 more days to get Tessa's big blue crowns there.
5 crowns, Ellie. 5 crowns.
5 crowns, John. Thank you.
Not just one.
It's a lot to give away. Tess, you're very inspirational.
Thank you.
And we're delighted that you came to us. And on a personal note for myself, I hope you will look at the services that ReadersMagnet offers. They're just a super group of people. They have worked so hard to put this forward, to put this on. It's not easy to, it's not easy to put on an event that has drawn 15,000 people from all over the world. And
But let me say that Eleanor over here has just been a huge jewel to that crown
Absolutely.
that Reader's Magnet has been
I've sat
wearing.
in on a few.
Thank you.
Very
Yes.
nice.
thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.